Hey guys, thanks for tuning into Biomassed this weekend before Christmas. I know you're all probably as freakishly busy as we are, so we'll probably go with a bit of a shorter show today. But yeah, Jason will hopefully be joining us in a little bit. He has something to deal with, but he will hopefully be back at some point during the show. But yeah, thanks for listening in to us on the stream. I apologize for the late start. I was having some technical issues, but we got it sorted out, so we're good to go now. I guess we'll start off with some brief introductions. Kind of a small crew tonight, but let's go from the top with Iron Wolf Saber.
Hello, I'm Iron Wolf Saber, member of CPM1, and nice to meet you on Happy Holidays.
And Leither.
Hey guys, I'm Leither. I'm an officer in Maul and Lob, and I'll wish everyone a happy holidays and happy New Year as well.
Yeah, and Zell.
I'm Soraya Xel, CPM1, co-host on the show, and I'm gonna buck the trend of political correctness and say Merry freaking Christmas.
The thing is that people think I say Happy Holidays because I'm being politically correct, but I actually have a lot of friends from various religions that I say Happy Holidays to because it's more convenient.
I'm just messing with you.
I mean, I could say Happy Christmas Hanukkah Kwanzaa or something if it'll make you feel better. No.
I just say it to bait reactions. I'm an extremely conservative part of the country, so.
Oh, well, I'm in Arizona, so you know how it goes. But yeah, I'm Pokey Dravon from OSG Planetary Operations and co-host here on Biomass. So again, thanks for tuning in to listen to us. We probably have, I don't know, what, 3 people listening to the stream, but it's good to have you. So like I said, probably a pretty short show today. A lot going on in real life, and it's been a little slow in game. But let's start off with our usual CPM1 update. So Soraya Xel.
CM update is relatively short, only based on the fact that I can't say anything. We had a meeting with CCP Rouge. It was a good meeting. Things were said back and forth. Good conversation. Good discussion. That's all I got. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, I suppose you have your limitations, as frustrating as that is, but I think overall people are, to varying degrees, satisfied with the development of Dust, which is better than no development, which we thought we were going to get post FanFest. I think that the push into 1.9 and 1.10 has been pretty huge. It's certainly taken me by surprise. So, you know, I think in all that's a positive, even if some of the features people are griping about, like strong boxes, is a heated topic, but I think we covered that pretty deeply last week. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Iron Wolf?
I don't know, it's a slow week anyways because of the holidays up and coming for everybody, and people over there celebrate all sorts of holidays too, so.
Yep.
And
Speaking
most of CPM will be down and out for the count, so yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, even I'm pretty much, as I put zombieing my way through the last remaining days of my work before taking a break for the holidays, so I am a little out of it and just not very active, but totally understandable. But speaking of holidays, I am hearing reports that there are snowball launchers in Dust. Do you guys want to talk about that at all?
Oh, that was supposed to be a big surprise, and yeah, it's out now. There's now there's the prototype one, which is only requires advanced skills, I believe, to use. It costs about 45,000 ISK a copy. Then, if you're willing to spend some more, there's the BPO version. It is not tied to the year though.
So what do you mean about the BPO? It's not tied to what?
The year. Every year when CCP first introduced snowball launchers in Eve, they labeled them by years. So like 2011, 2012. Well, for Dust 514, we're doing the same thing for a bit. The BPC the copies you can buy are labeled for this year, and I'm pretty sure next year they're going to be on 2016s instead.
Oh, so you're saying that the BPC is the collector's edition version that's got the specific year, where the BPO is non-specific.
Yep.
Okay, that's pretty cool. It was I had a bit of a feeling when they added that update with the visual customization for weapons and whatnot that we might be seeing something like that. I mean, I've been playing Eve for a few years now, and I always look forward to the bundle of toys we get, and the snowball launchers included. I would love to see a firework swarm launcher for end of year. That'd be really cool to light up the sky that way. But we'll see. I'm sure you guys won't actually tell me if we're getting that or not, right?
Hey, you can wish and hope and make the request, and maybe they'll look into it.
Yeah, no, I think it's kind of cool. It's funny because the people on the forum, some people are like, we're complaining like, what is this shit? Why we have snowball launchers in our game? And all the people that are familiar with the tradition in Eve are freaking out, myself included, because it was a pretty fun little a toy that I wasn't expecting, but had some thoughts of that they could maybe do something like that. So that's been a lot of fun. So glad to see that they're at least kind of getting into that new Eden tradition of having our annual presents and whatnot.
I thought it was a little silly that they're mad it did no damage.
I know, so because like, we'll do like 5 damage so I can finish some guy off. I'm like, okay, yeah. If you want to kill a highly advanced Iron Man suit with a snowball, I think it's a little silly, but it's pretty funny that the reaction, because like I said, some people are obviously not familiar with it where others are. So I think it's been a lot of fun.
I saw a funny post. I don't know if it was legitimate, but it was claiming that someone defended a point with a snowball launcher because everyone was running away from the explosions. But
I actually would love to see some videos of a snowball team just bombarding people and getting torn apart. It'd be pretty funny.
I linked one where the Japanese players were definitely having fun with it, and they were apparently in an ambush pub that about 3/4 of the people had snowball launchers, and they're just having a snowball fight.
That's awesome. I love seeing that kind of a emergent, silly gameplay that's takes a bit of a break from the usual carnage to go have a snowball fight or fire off some fireworks. It's good to see that actually made its way into Dust as well. I think it's a really good part of the social experience, which CCP is admittedly pretty good at allowing things like that to happen. So one of their better parts in development, I think, is the social side. Did we lose Leither?
It looks like we did. We already lost me once today, so we're just throwing everybody.
So speaking of your connection issues, you obviously suffered a little bit earlier this week.
You're gonna have to give me your recording, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's fine. I'll give it to you, 2-3 weeks from now, and you can get it uploaded then.
That would be about just deserving about my speed at getting the podcast actually posted.
Well, it'd be in line with my YouTube updates as well, which I will do eventually someday. I got 2 of them up this week, so you should be proud. But anyways, is there anything else you guys want to? Oh yeah, the connection issues. So you said in the pre-show that they were having issues, obviously, and it was just a hardware thing. So did you want to elaborate on that, or is it just a?
There's no elaboration. CCP posted what they told us, which is that there was a hardware issue and it has been found and corrected.
Okay, well that's good to know. I know that I tried getting on and it was like, oh well, shit. So it's good to see that that's been fixed. Hey, Leither's back.
Sorry.
That's fine. We were just discussing jolly snowball fun and connection issues, which everyone seems to be suffering from.
Too bad Soraya's little request didn't go through, which was to turn every map into snow maps for a short bit.
Oh, that would be kind of funny, actually.
Really fun. I remember snow moods being a thing for a while, and I haven't seen one in a long time.
Maybe for the best. I remember them looking really bad.
But it'd be fun for Christmas.
No doubt, right? Like they probably just kind of nixed
one day
everything.
only. That'd been more than enough.
I was shocked that they actually got the snowball things in.
Well, I mean, they've got the 12 Days of Dust coming up that starts on the 25th, isn't it?
Yep.
Okay, and that goes till the first of the year or something like that. So that'll be fun as well. I remember last year it was you just logged in and got a different set of weapons for each day, I think it was.
And they're tying this to the daily missions, if I remember correctly, this year. So you have to complete it. I think 3 daily missions to get your daily reward.
Okay, well that's good. I mean, I'm glad that the daily missions offer a reward for people who actually log in and play, because I've been guilty of it as well, where I've been going to bed and go,
get your
oh
bonus
shit. Yeah, I log in for 5 seconds and log back out just to keep my chain going, which is it's not good. You should actually be rewarded for actually playing the game. So that's a big plus side to the daily mission system as well.
Well, another major plus side from my point of view is that you're actually able to track your progress towards the event. Instead of playing Guess Who, it was like, okay, how many hours did I log this week?
That's a good point.
Or how many fights I already have? Then the reward system, because now it's automated.
Yeah, no more waiting for X number of weeks to actually get the reward. I actually bring up a good point. I didn't think about that they could add in a special mission that can actively track event standing in various events that they do, rather than kind of like you said on a pen and paper keeping track of what you're doing. You can actually actively track that and let players actually see where they're at. So that's actually a really good point. I'm looking forward to that if they can indeed work it that way. I think Rattati also mentioned when we had him on that at some point they're looking at adding like a second layer of missions where you have to do something in a certain suit or with a certain role or something. Is there anything more on that? Because that's actually been a thing popping up on the forums. I've seen a bit that people want a little more specific, higher level mission things they can do.
That's always a possibility. For example, weekly missions. If we, I've been suggesting to CSP Retired, and I'm pretty sure other players have too. Or the missions that would like take a little bit longer and emphasize a greater challenge. There could also be another layer of missions where they are very specific. For example, using a certain type of weapon or using a certain type of suit, and trying to understand the nuances of each weapon and suit. Use it as a teaching tool, if you will.
Yeah, I think that's good because I think people tend to get a little locked into a certain playstyle or a certain weapon and suit, and
Right.
if you don't get out of that, the game gets stale pretty quick. I mean, one thing that I've always done is I train everything to level 1 so I can at least try it, and I do all kinds of just random testing, and I think that if you can encourage people to kind of break their habits and actually go with different weapons and suits to complete those missions, you're going to make it a little more interesting, and it encourages a little more diversity. I mean, obviously specialization is key in a game like this, but I think trying out new things certainly keeps it a little interesting, and it also helps you understand, how to counter those things on the field. Like if you're having an issue with tanks, if you tank for a while, you quickly learn what works and what doesn't work when people are, hitting you with AV. And I think that seeing both sides of engagements is really a good thing. And any way to encourage people to do that is probably going to make their experience in the long run a lot better because they're going to be a little more successful, I think. And it mixes it up. I mean, you don't want to be doing the same thing all the time, but people tend to do that unless you encourage them otherwise. So I think overall the mission system opens up a lot of possibilities for, like Iron Wolf said, teaching tools or just general quality of life, making the game better in maybe not so direct ways, but just making things a little more interesting for the players, which is always a good thing. So I think it's good overall.
I just hope it just continues to get further iterated on and worked upon and definitely improved upon, because it's one of those good systems that almost any free-to-play MMO could definitely use.
Yeah, I think I'm a big fan of anything that is kind of a wide arcing system that can be used for various purposes. And I think this mission system, as you pointed out earlier, has a lot of uses, and I'm really encouraged to see them making choices to develop things like this, because it really kind of opens the game up a little bit more and provides additional branches that the game can go down to make it a little more deep and interesting. So I'm really glad to see that they're actually pushing for things like that rather than just kind of drilling into the same stuff that they have been for a while, which, I mean, is good, but balance only goes so far. You want to make the game actually feel like it's evolving and changing and make it feel like it actually has a future, which I think many people have been encouraged recently that it really has improved their outlook on where the game is going and what it's capable of, especially with these updates, the 1.9 and 1.10, no one really expected. And then obviously the roadmap with the upcoming, I guess I'll call it an expansion with 2.0 or 1.0 of a new name, whatever you want to call it. I think that's huge. I mean, we don't really have any details, but I think that the fact that they're calling it something new means significant changes are on the way. And I think people are pretty excited about that. So I'm really encouraged, and I hope others are as well.
The unofficial declaration of Legion death.
I don't think it's going to be called that. I think it's going to be probably an expansion upon existing systems. I would love to see.
I'm starting a petition. That's going to be the name. That's not what I was trying to say. I'm just kind of speculating. The fact that they're finally willing to even run a new named expansion is pretty much the nail in the coffin of my expectations of anything interesting coming from Legion's direction.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's certainly. I mean, before I was on the Legion bandwagon with everyone else, where I was like, well, we'll just kind of keep Dust on life support until Legion is done, then we'll hop over there. But honestly, with the things that have been happening in Dust, and obviously these expansions or rather the updates and then the expansion, I've kind of put Legion on the back burner. I don't really care about it anymore because I think that Dust's future is going to be in Dust and not jumping to a new game. So, I mean, we don't have any details, obviously, but it's kind of like, I know Dust exists, I know what it is, I know where it could go, but for Legion, I don't even know if it exists or what the hell it is. Because, I mean, as Jason's pointed out, we're fairly certain that Dust is either a third-person strategy, or a strategy game, or a card game or something, because we have no idea. So I don't care about Legion anymore, to be honest with
I
you.
like the card game idea. I should just forward that through. Be like, yeah, just scrap all that, like, next gen stuff. Make a card game.
Oh,
Well, that's
shit.
what
WoW did that.
Metal Gear had something like that, right?
Really?
They had a very odd handheld game that's like not in the main sequence that I think had some sort of card-based element to it, along with like an almost Final Fantasy Tactics style thing. I'm sure someone will, listening will know perhaps what it is. I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised, correct me if I'm wrong, that we don't have some sort of New Eden-themed card game, because, do we? Not that I'm aware of.
There was a card game. There was a card game.
I have a booster pack of them.
Did it just never branch out?
Unfortunately, I never got past Exodus.
I played a round of the Danger game with some friends over Thanksgiving. This reminds me.
Playing that. How'd it go? Because I haven't.
It was terrible. It was the worst round. It was the worst possible round of the Danger game that you could possibly play. And for the viewers and guys who haven't seen the rules, basically it's definitely CCP's board game. It's kind of a mix of, I've heard people say it's like a mix of Monopoly and Trivial Pursuit minus the trivia questions. But it dragged on. So I think I got addicted to cocaine within 4 turns, and it seemed like I was out of the game. And then about an hour later, I somehow won. We were all completely dissatisfied in the sense that it's like, just let it be over. It has to end.
I'm gonna have to sidetrack my friend's favorite board game next time he's over here, and we'll have to try out the Danger game and see what I think.
You should try to get more than one additional person. I don't know how well it plays
I have
with two.
multiple people. It's just I have a particular friend who keeps bringing over a board game and insisting we play it. So I will find multiple friends and make them play the Danger game instead and see what happens.
It's very interesting, they have drug elements. I said I got addicted to cocaine. If you get a certain number of wasted cards, if you get up to that cocaine level, you basically can't do anything. Anytime you get any points, any money, you're apt to lose them in a couple turns. It's really funny because you're unable to. Your turn is basically useless.
I seem to remember listening to a recording of a developer talking about the Danger game, because I got it in the Eve special collector's edition, and I remember him saying that we released the game and we were getting reports that people were playing it with their friends and their family, and the game was literally ruining friendships because of the stuff that happened in the game, and we decided we liked that, so we thought we'd keep that sort of element. We developed Eve Online, so. Like Eve, the Danger game has been ruining people's relationships with each other since the very beginning, and apparently it's a terrible game. Like you said, I haven't tried it yet.
I had a run through that was modestly entertaining. It has an element where you can basically do anything to anyone. You get these things called karma cards, and you can just play them whenever you want, and they do nasty things to people. And that element is kind of the backbitey part. It can be fun, but if you have a situation where it looks like a guy is pulling ahead, then it's just like a PC. Everyone starts targeting them, and it can drag the game out a lot longer than it needs to go.
That's pretty amusing. That same sort of dichotomy of that guy's doing well, we should all just screw him over for the sake of screwing him over is very New Eden. I find it funny that sort of gameplay and mentality has persisted from the very beginning, even before Eve's existence.
Yeah, it definitely, even discounting the pictures of devs, it definitely has their fingerprints all over it.
That's awesome. I actually I forgot I had it, to be honest. I mostly got the collector's edition for the in-game stuff for Eve and Dust, but I'll have to crack that out and see if I can convince my family to play it, and I'll hate each
Be
other by the end of
careful.
the night.
Yeah, be careful. You're gonna need family counseling afterwards.
I live in a very, very cutthroat competitive family, so it would probably be a total slaughter of a game, but we'd probably get over it pretty quick too. So it might actually work.
You might be the first person I know who's described their family as cutthroat.
Oh, you have no idea. We used to go up to my grandparents' cabin up in Minnesota, and we would play Uno of all games, and it would be like mean to each other. Like we would like plot silently to screw someone over by giving them all the draw 2 and draw 4 cards and just try to ruin everyone's life. It was. I have an interesting family. Our holiday get-togethers are always entertaining, to say the least. So I think a little danger game might be well suited for it.
Yeah, I have the exact opposite. In the sense that, like, sometimes I get strategic, and then my family's like, could you just stop? Just stop planning like that.
Oh no, we're very mean in a nice way to each other. It's I had an interesting
It's
childhood.
like Congress.
Kinda, yeah. It's like playing Risk, but in your living room without the actual board game.
Speaking of PC, though, that's kind of the core of the epic arcs that they have coming up for the named expansion. Yeah.
Yeah. Very uninformed, tinfoil here, but I'm kind of wondering if planned expansion is very PC centric. Since faction warfare is kind of revamped a little bit over as we go, but I think, as they've said, that PC is kind of the keystone of the game. It wouldn't surprise me if a PC rework is on the books as the main feature for the expansion in around February.
That definitely has me a tad alarmed, because it is the holiday time, but if CCP don't accept a lot of community feedback on PC, and if they don't essentially rebuild it, the thing is the current mechanics are so incredibly broken that I don't know any single person or any small group of people who have even a ghost of a chance of getting it right by themselves. The original PC 1.0 mechanics, they were well intentioned,
but they
right? That's the scary part, is that they were well intentioned, maybe a bit rushed. I say maybe, definitely a bit rushed. But about 5 people on Team True Grit tried really hard to make a functioning system, and it sucks. So the thought that CCP might be, holding PC changes in reserve to play like Rat has in the past for, say, the E-Warfare I don't think even the E-Warfare, but the bandwidth changes, where we're kind of told the design, and it's like, please tweak the numbers. That's completely unworkable for PC. The system is too huge, and any small flaw ends up with, masses of people leaving the game because of the huge time investment, right? Like, no matter how you slice it, if people want to invest that amount of time, PC would be the place to do it. So when you end up with terrible mechanics like we did in PC 1.0, I watched an exodus of my friends and fellow players who played MAG and started in Dust even, that quit within a month after PC 1.0 just turned out awful. So
yeah, I totally agree. I think that, obviously there's some people on the CPM who are very well versed in PC, but the fact of the matter is you can't figure this crap out with just 1 or 5 or even 10 people. It needs to be a large group endeavor, and it's great to come up with ideas, but you need to kind of push those out for feedback and approval ASAP. And I know Zell has actually said in the past that
Yeah,
if they need to get
I've
that out.
said it like I just said it in a Skype channel like about 60 seconds ago.
Oh, okay.
I've said that a lot. They need to get it out. It really should be out like now. It is going to need some feedback. I do think it's going to work. I think it's going to work pretty well. I like the direction that's being gone with it. CCP and the CPM are very much on the same page with it. But it definitely needs, community once, twice, and thrice over feedback, and it's hopefully that can get out as soon as possible.
I mean, it kind of scares me, Zell. No, with no offense meant to any of the CPM or CCP, but even the way you guys talk about it, it sounds like you have a substantial amount of implementation, right? That you're pondering without getting too specific about what that may or may not be. And any implementation details involve a higher level decision on essentially the cornerstones of the game mode, the design goals of the game mode. And also, if in the past when anybody has turned up with an implementation, when especially when it's CCP, changing the core parts of the implementation has been essentially impossible, right? You might disagree with single points along the implementation path, and traditionally this has been the numbers game. But if what falls into the community's lap is look at these numbers for this system and tweak them, the system can easily be riddled with holes, and it just seems like whenever CCP posts material like that, just like anybody, they're like real married to it, right? So I would just, I'm scared as crap that's what's going to go down, and frankly, this needs to go right, because I strongly object to Rat's position that FAQ war wasn't the thing to treat. There are so many reasons to do that. But obviously they've been super committal, so I'll bet development has already started on PC.
I think FAQ War is probably in the best state, though. Like, I think there's more to be done, but I think it's something that can be easily. I think what FAQ War needs can be easily addressed, whereas that's 1 out of 3 game modes, and I think that all 3 need to be brought up in quality to somewhat of an even bar. And I think PC's in the worst state, and that's the reason to invest the most effort into it. Right.
It's not the effort expended. That's certainly the case, right? And that would actually be why I would say FAQ War. FAQ War doesn't need a fundamental redesign, right, to be functional. It needs polishing on a few key features. And the thing is, and this is a topic that comes up a lot, it's very difficult to make Planetary Conquest accessible, and accessibility seems to be a very, very much recurring idea that I see from a lot of people that I've talked to about PC.
Absolutely.
Is that it, in financially, knowledge-wise, in a whole swath of ways, their PC right now is inaccessible, and it's so hard to both make it a conquest-based game mode where there's ownership of assets and people control those. People are always going to find an abusive strategy where that sort of thing is concerned. So it's hard to combine that and accessibility when you don't have a middle link from pub matches to PC. And that's where FAQ War would sit if it were polished, right? I'm beating a dead horse. It's evident that Rat really didn't ask too many people's opinion before deciding PC was the way to go. But
well, if you've been playing EVE Online, FAQ War is not a stepping stone towards nullsec at all. It itself has become an endgame means as well.
And I mean, certainly that's something that you could anticipate happening in development of an endgame in FAQ War, but the lack of it being a stepping stone, I think, is more because of the technical dynamics of how EVE works. In EVE, you can bring as many people online to a fleet fight as possible, sans lag, and time dilation. And you can train people up for nullsec. In that way, you can go do low-sec roams and find activity. Whatever you want to do, right? You can find a way to build your expertise in an organized fashion.
I agree that the numbers limit is a huge issue for Dust, because that cap, with other games you can have less experienced people, but you can simply do more of them, and that's not an option in Dust.
Not only can you not bring more of them, which is kind of an interesting point. I, of course, would love to see the player cap higher if it were actually technically feasible, which I'm sure it's not, judging from, past experience with Dust.
Just watch all those performance improvements go right down the drain as you turn that dial up.
There's no way. They just don't have the capacity to do that, as much as I would yearn to have it even the 24v24 that we were originally promised, much less the 32v32 and bigger that we had hoped for. But the thing is, there's no training ground. There's no place where between PC and pub matches where you can take people in and not be risking hand over fist ISK amounts to train people, or else you also can't really take people into PC who don't have essentially full proto gear versus a team that doesn't, and expect them to learn anything. If I take, a team of 10 guys in advanced gear and 6 in proto, and we do everything right against a team in full proto and PC, we'll lose most of the time. I mean, maybe we'll get lucky, right? But you'll mostly just lose because there's nothing.
How much of that is because they're in full proto, and how much of it is because they have a lot of experience playing at PC and are actually really
it's a
good
lot
at it?
with the full proto. This problem was exacerbated even harder in the 8v8s, but the 8v8s have a real great track record of that. You guys might remember Pink Fluffy Bunnies, and they
That's
had
old school.
Yeah, they had a guy named Slap who was an excellent tanker, and the rest of their team were very active. So as soon as the E3 build dropped, I believe, back in 2012, they very quickly outpaced most people in SP totals. And my experience against them, we had some good games, but you didn't learn that much if you had worse gear, because you just spend more time on the ground. There's nothing to be done for it. Spend more time on the ground, spend more time on the spawn screen. And I certainly won't say that this strategy or skill of one team or another, it's difficult to say which one exceeded the other. Pink Fluffy Bunnies probably were beating my team at the time in that realm as well. But it was probably also a lot closer than the results that we ended up pulling out. And that happens in PC. I mean, just ask someone who runs big PC teams. You can't. If you took a bunch of veterans and put them in advanced gear, I'd like to see someone actually try this. They probably still get wrecked.
I don't know. Back before we launched, we had plenty of closed resets, and a very common thing we did before resets was Armageddon Day. And oddly enough, what a lot of the veterans, well, the higher skill people did that day was they went back to their militia gear, and they still whooped the ever-loving crud out of just anybody they came across because of their skills. Not only their skills, but their knowledge augmented so much of their ability to perform on the field. It wasn't even funny.
There was weaponry back then, right? It certainly, there was certainly an element of that, and I used to personally play in standard gear all the time back during that phase of the beta, and I performed a lot better than I do now, because that weaponry skill was 25% of damage boost plus what is the stupid skill called, proficiency, which is another however much it was back then, nearly 25 bonus. You had a big damage boost. A bunch of the damage on your gun was coming from those two skills, and then you add on of course, the shield skills and the armor skills, which are still in the game for HP boosting.
It was 10% for weaponry and 25% for proficiency, but that was straight out. It was straight out damage up.
At level 5, I thought it was like 5% per level or something ridiculous on weaponry before.
Proficiency, it was 5%, and it was straight damage buff instead of the armored and shield slice it is now.
Right. So certainly things were evened out a little bit more in those days for veteran players, but like these days, I personally have performed a lot worse after those things got nerfed, right? Because in standard gear, for instance, and this is of course anecdotal, but just kind of a thought, once those things got nerfed, I no longer was able to kind of compensate for the tier difference that we were seeing with those skills. And instead, the bulk of the difference in stats was based on whatever gear, and I was still running standard BPO stuff. And certainly, I will say in a less anecdotal way, but more from experience. It's anecdotal, but just a lot of experience. In a PC match, when you're trying to play at the most competitive level possible, you can afford maybe 1 to 2 to 3 really good players in advanced gear. And once you start getting past those numbers and the enemy maintains all proto, you start having... If you have a squad's worth of people, or even half a squad's worth of people who are more likely to die, that's just a big deal. Because when half a squad's worth of people get wiped out attacking an objective or defending an objective, that's when you start losing objectives. And it's much more... happens much more often if they have that gear discrepancy. Of course, that's why I always whine about tier side, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, I will say that another problem that PC is probably facing is the lack of new tactics. Everyone's going towards the most efficient means of winning. So the variety of things being brought to the field is not that interesting in PC, whereas in pub matches, you get a whole smattering of all sorts of different gear types, gear levels, and even gear fits, and no one seems to care that much. But go to PC, and it's very strict on what sort of fits you're bringing as a team, because you only got so many people to bring with you, and you better optimize best as possible.
Isn't that pretty common on EVA? I mean, they have corporations will give you, this is what you fit your ship as, don't come to the fight unless you have this fit. I mean, isn't that pretty common?
It is fairly common to the point that the fleet commander, if he catch you in anything that is not fleet doctrine, he'll order the fleet to shoot your ass.
No, those are really, really douchey corps. I've flown with corps who do that, and they're just nasty people. Most of the time, it's really just like, this is the doctrine. Usually there's a couple allowances for if your skills are a bit weaker, and if you don't have something that you can, and if you do fly something off doctrine, usually they'll just either ignore you or laugh at you when you get blown up first.
Yeah, there are those corps very conscious about their ISK efficiency. So if you show up in a ship that they even deem not PP worthy, they'd rather get the kill off you than let the enemy get it.
Doctrines were always something that I kind of wanted to implement when I was doing PC organization, and I couldn't really justify, interestingly enough, because there aren't actually that big of a range of acceptable strategies in Dust at any one point in time. That's kind of an interesting side discussion, right? Like,
I mean, the interesting thing is you do have more variety, because you don't just put, I mean, jokes aside, you generally don't put 16 scouts in a team. Whereas,
sure, but you also don't, there's not as much incentivization in Dust to have a core team concept, partially because it's an FPS game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in EVE, obviously, when you take a bunch of long-range artillery guys, it has a very discernible effect on your engagement, as opposed to in an FPS, if you take everybody with rail rifles, like, you can shoot people from farther away, maybe back when rail rifles are a bit better. You can shoot people from farther away, but the game is not such that you can choose your movement patterns as freely. So, when you have those long-range guns in Eve, you're going to keep your fleet a long way away from people as much as possible. In Dust, that's not necessarily an option. The guy just runs at you. Sorry, that was really bizarre. The guy just runs at you. But also, there's not really very much incentive for HP-based centralization. At one point in time, I remember trying to get the teams I was running towards an armor-based HP doctrine, but it was just very difficult to justify and convince people, because it's actually bad in Dust's environment, right? If you sit everybody, say, armor-oriented at the same time, because then someone could actually take out a bunch of mass drivers and have maybe an edge against you. But there's no distinct advantage for having a bunch of armor stuff. I mean, sure, you can repair all of it, so maybe you can put some reppers on your lodges, and that's about it. Kind of another interesting aside. There's not a big team-based incentivization to use similar types of gear and HP types.
I think that comes down to the logistics, though, because armor, the difference between armor and shields in Eve is very different than the difference in armor and shields in Dust, and I think that's a big part of what you're getting at.
I mean, that's an implementation, right? Like, the kind of general theme is that the types aren't as different in Dust, but how they make them more different in Eve isn't necessarily appropriate for FPS games.
I would say that probably the most underlying cause why that sort of thinking just fails in Dust and not in Eve. In Eve, you have to often deal with possible engagement windows being hours long, and you're stuck in the same platform for that just long amount of time. So it creates an interesting dynamic when you met this fleet that's been out and about for an hour, and you bring your fleet to try to test your mettle against theirs. In Dust 514, if you bring out a certain doctrine and you wipe out the enemy once with it, you're only successful until they respawn again. And when they respawn again, they're going to come with the counters.
Potentially. Interestingly enough, that type of gameplay doesn't happen because it's not incentivized. It's weird. It's like it doesn't exist because it could be effective, if that makes sense.
It is just far more effective to come with Skittles teams, to say.
Exactly. Like, I've never sat down with a PC team and said, now everybody switch their mass drivers because it looks like they have extra armor guys. And it's not for lack of observation. It's just that nobody ever has enough people to merit that kind of change on a team level. Maybe, as on a personal level, you can look at it and say, I just fought a squad full of armored guys, I can switch to a mass driver, but that's an individual decision. It's not something you'd be like doing on a team level.
I think the largest amount of team level call out you're going to get is they just deployed an armor tank, we need anti-armor AV.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, for sure.
It's usually part of the plan. Aspiring FCs, this is a good thing to do, is to make sure that you have designated people who will switch into AV, and you set those up before the game, because if you don't, a lot of times you're going to end up with some real awkward situations where people either, you say you need AV and people switch into it and too many people do, or you say you need AV and everybody thinks everybody else has got it. So you should set that up beforehand. But yeah, that is pretty much the extent of the preparation.
Yeah, I've learned that from my Red Cross training. Don't ever just say call for 911. You point to that person and you demand that one person to do what you need him to do, which is to call 911. Same concept applies when you're talking to a whole bunch of people when it comes to certain situations.
It's good advice. And so I guess this was a digression. The point is that the amount of coordination necessary, even to impart the idea of competitive skirmish strategies, right? Like, it's hard. It's a hard learning cliff to get over when you haven't seen it before, just how fast a competitive skirmish game needs to go at the beginning. You have 30 seconds to set your team up. And often the first 30 seconds to minute and 30 seconds of a skirmish game are the most active and important. if you mess up a single thing, call a vehicle in the wrong order, a guy doesn't run and do his job and capture an objective, you lose. You just automatically lose against a team that's doing it correctly. Imparting that level of experience on newer players is impossible to do, to taking them into a game and letting them experience that firsthand. But again, it's also almost impossible to keep people engaged with Dust from standard to proto enough to see that interesting aspect of the game. And that's why I think FAC War not having I don't hate to say it, not having team deploy and not having the 3 to 4 fixes in addition to team deploy, and there's a lot of discussion about
Drop
that.
a big keyword.
Not having those 3 to 4 things that it needs to be polished leaves us without a link between those two game modes, and so they're going to put a lot of effort into PC, and if they don't, it's just going to be bad, right? Like, it needs to be essentially redesigned. It needs to be carefully redesigned, and then you're going to end up with a thing that maybe the handful of people still playing PC 1.0 have any preparation to get into. And again, accessibility versus the other parts of PC that I usually view as essential, the ownership aspects, persistent ownership, conquest-based game mode, huge logistics, those are directly contradictory with accessibility. So if you make it too accessible, then you've essentially made PlanetSide 2, right? If you make it too inaccessible, you get EVE Online, which is actually completely unsatisfactory, both to EVE Online and to Dust 514, from my perspective. So
Agree.
Let me ask you this on the PC. Are you guys formulating a well thought out complex of plans, or has there actually been man hours put into development and implementation of said plans?
I couldn't tell you where CCP is on preparing the next release. I assume they're already working on at least some parts of it. Whether or not that's the part that includes PC, I don't know. We've talked a lot about the design and very specifically the goals for what the design needs to accomplish. And I really do think that it's at the stage where players need to be able to provide feedback on what's been said so far. And I'm just going to keep pushing that until we see it.
Yeah, because that kind of goes back to what Leither was saying, that I think it's perfectly acceptable for you guys to develop this is what we think it should work like, this is how, and actually formulate this is how it works together rather than just throwing out random ideas, because everyone has got their own different version of it. So I think it's good to have at least a rough outline of what you want to happen and how it's going to happen. But as soon as you start spending man hours on implementation, CCP is going to become increasingly less willing to change or even remove the effort they've put forward in terms of actual development. So I think that's kind of the line that comes down to where I would feel comfortable with is how much time has been spent on actually programming and implementing this, opposed to we're just talking about it and putting together a rough outline for community feedback. So like you said, I really do hope that they push this out soon, because I don't want them to start getting into that actual implementation stage and then become increasingly unwilling to actually make compromise and change things, because as Leither pointed out, this can go bad really quickly. Even something as fundamental like, clone production is how you fight and also make money. I think that on a fundamental scale is broken. And if you've got an element like that in the current design, you can't. It will screw up everything. Like, one bad apple that's core to the design is going to screw up the entire batch, and I'm really worried about that. So
Right.
Hopefully, we'll see where they're at soon, because anyone who actually looked at the PC design before it came out could tell you it was broken before it was even out, and if it's that bad,
did.
Yeah, and nothing happened because they had already developed the damn thing, and they aren't going to want to delete the work they did because they spent money on it. And I want to save them money and actually push out a product that works, rather than we think this is going to work, but we just didn't see the issues of it because we had too small of a testing bed.
I'm very happy. Quote that. Play it back at me at different times. I'm very happy to hear that the CPM and CCP have focused on design goals. I would just throw in, if you have discussed as a group, if CCP have design goals in mind for PC, those should not be long. They're design goals, right? If you have like 20 of them, then you're never gonna. It's useless anyway.
It's core concept type of stuff.
They should be ready to drop that now to talk about.
I agree.
Like, even if there's pieces of implementation that you're anticipating creating a more detailed structure over to get feedback on, it is critically important that the community shoot down or bolster or append some of the goals, because we got lucky with what Rouge had for, say, Legion, right? He had 4 design goals that he laid down. I always forget them because I tried to forget FanFest last year.
I don't remember the design goal.
We don't blame you.
One of them's a player-based economy. One of them was New Eden, I remember. So just which I thought was a pretty poor design goal, actually, because it's super vague. But this idea of being engaged with the universe. I remember thinking that they were relatively good design goals, and having those place before marrying yourself to an implementation means that we don't have to have big lawyer-like discussions saying, well, here are the design goals that we decided on, and here's why these add up to don't do this. Whereas if you get the design goals parsed and completed really by the community first, we can make the argument, don't start working on that because these things don't add up to the design goals. You don't want a revision in the design goals when you're halfway through the implementation.
Yeah, I think I agree with Leith that I'm glad to hear that they actually are kind of taking a top-down approach to it, because, you can't just go to the community and say, we want to fix PC, so how should we do that, because it'll be a zoo. I think if you can actually kind of fit some constraints of this is what we want to accomplish, maybe via some of these systems, what do you think? You're going to get a lot better feedback in terms of a little more focused discussion rather than just everyone having their opinion. So I'm glad to hear that they actually have, at least a rough outline, however deeply developed that is. It's good to actually have some constraints that you can present to the community so the feedback you do get is useful rather than just, we have 20,000 ideas and all of them are different, because that's not going to get you anywhere, and it's too hard to sift through. So I am as well, and am happy to hear that they've been kind of taking that approach to the design.
Don't twist the nails, Soraya. No, twist the nails.
Oh, we didn't have to do much twisting. Well, Zil, and the entire CPM developed our side of the conversation, and we got in a meeting with CCP with it, and they brought their documents, we brought our documents, we compared notes, and we were rather surprised how very similar they were, to the point that we're even using the same terms.
Well, that's good. I actually, speaking of PC, one of the small things, I think I posted this on the Trello board. Like, if someone has, I don't guess CCP has the man hours to spin anymore. It would be real nice if, someone would actually update the wiki article for PC currently to make it actually reflect.
Yeah, that's probably a tall order.
So
I've tried editing the wiki and it keeps on saving all the changes, so it's like, screw it.
Yeah, it's evidently CCP locked. It would certainly be bad for it to be open and someone to change a critical aspect at the wrong time.
Yeah, I know that we've got. That's one of those things that would lovingly be wonderfully easy to do if we had this thing called the ISD in Dust, which is, of course, something I would still like to see someday.
It would.
But there is a conceivable point. I don't know if this is something that could be brought up, is maybe even having, somewhere that, maybe if someone had, one of the unofficial not wikis, and the community work together on some pages, and then push those to CCP to say, hey, we've all gone over this, and this looks pretty representative of what we see in game. Can you put this on the official one? Something like that maybe would be really cool. If it could be kind of community worked, and then CCP would just have to like push the button to make that officially part of theirs. Something like that. I don't know.
I mean, that's a good point. Like, part of the difficulty is that evidently, since we're talking about PC changes, how much use are we going to get out of like data document? And I concede that point, right? At this,
well, I'm just saying, like, for the
it
wiki
hadn't
in general,
occurred to
there's
me.
a lot of out-of-date information on the wiki, I would assume.
Yeah, it hadn't even occurred to me that the resources were so spread out until the other day, and I was trying to write like a really nice post with an introduction and background. It's like, it's in 3 different locations, and they're all on slightly different sites in the sense that some of it's in a dev blog, some of it's on the wiki, the official Evilopedia wiki, and some of it is in a forum post for Hotfix Alpha, and I can't find it anywhere else.
Yeah, I remember that discussion about all the different places you had to go to get all the different pieces of current PC mechanics.
But that's not actually exhaustive, because there's completely undocumented behavior,
right,
that you would have to track. Essentially, you'd have to track down Hawk and Pete to get the full and rigorous answer anymore. Because
I think one of the aspects where a player written posts would actually be really solid if there was enough people involved in the project to kind of vet them, is that in some cases there are probably situations where players know more than any individual person who could be tasked at CCP to write this stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously we've come across various instances where someone at CCP is not exactly sure of something that players are sure of. So, some of the really experienced players sitting down and coming up with some really comprehensive articles would actually be like probably top notch.
I mean, the difficulty in some ways is that undocumented stuff, you have to search your brain for it, right? Because it's not even listed as like a subheading in the docs. It's like, oh, right, we decided that one time after testing that one thing that if you change your reinforcement timer, this is actually a thing, if you change your reinforcement timer and then, attack a district, it actually takes longer for the battle to come in if you do it within a certain time window than the rules actually say it should. This was something we discovered while doing the locking stuff, because there was so much self-attacking going on. And that's the thing that springs to mind most readily. And even now, I can't remember all the specifics. This is the unfortunate part, but it's like, it takes 1 day longer for the thing to come through than you think it does. It's like, what?
Well, I mean, like, a wiki the whole point of a wiki is to be constantly iterated on, is, to be able to say, okay, well, you know what, we need to add this thing because this is weird, and that sort of thing. And that could be a really interesting project, but it would need people to manage it and make it happen.
It's alarming that it's also not available in game. I mean, it's not really available in game.
It's not available in game.
In Eve,
it's on the PS3, and PS3 is not known for its web browsing ability.
Right. In Eve, they don't actually have all the SOV information in game, correct?
Yes, they do.
Do they?
Yes, you go to maps, you solve, and it colors everything by the color.
Right, but I mean, all of the details of the mechanics cannot be read in game.
Oh no.
There's a lot of random. I mean, I think it's one of those things.
And it's not sortable. It's not. It's something you can't put to a spreadsheet, so to say.
Right, and I think it's one of those things where it's. I think with Eve, there's somewhat of an expectation that if you've gotten to the point that solve mechanics are a thing for you that you care about, you've probably already got like 5 third-party websites that you're using to operate your Eve account. So, with Eve, that's kind of I think it's less of a problem than it is with the PS3, where there are plenty of people who don't have a computer to look stuff up with, and in addition to the lack of any sort of comprehensive source.
Right, and I agree. That was pretty much the point I was going to make, in the sense that, even if you're sitting at a computer, I think in some cases Eve can link in through the game client, and it can
Yes,
pull
that
an
was really
operating
nice.
system thing, and it'll pull up Evelopedia in your default web browser, right?
Actually, it has an in-game web browser still.
Right.
They're
Yeah.
mostly talking about retiring it, though, or at least not adding features to it, I believe.
That seems super wise. I don't know what made that sound like a good idea. Like trying to keep your own web browser up to date when you're a game company.
It was Chromium based, so.
I mean, but I guess they just had a breaking build of Chromium, right? Like, whatever. It seems like that was an inevitable thing, I guess is what I would say, is that it would inevitably become outdated and they wouldn't feel like they had the resources to continue maintaining it, considering they're not a web browser company. But I digress. The point is, either way, that you have easy access to a web browser, a very easy access when you're on a computer. Nowhere near as much. And it's on Evelopedia. It's not like Dustlopedia. You really have to go looking for PC information if you want to find any of that documentation. Yeah. And in fact, I didn't know what I was looking for. There's no way I would have found all that stuff. All those 3 different sources. I might have found the Wikipedia article, but the dev blog is partially about something else as well. It's about an entire patch back after Uprising 1.0. So that, and of course Hotfix Alpha, it's in a forum post. So if you don't know the keywords to search for, you're not going to turn up the forum post. So I probably shouldn't be beating a dead horse there. It's in probably the worst possible condition that you could actually envisage it being, I guess is the point. You might as well send me a message in game and hope that I'll get back to you with some explanation of the mechanics. As an example, right? There are a few other people who can give you a rundown.
Denny Fleetfoot sends an army of emails dust mails every day to his new people.
Exactly. You're just as likely to get good information by doing that. Red, not very likely. I love everyone, but if you send me a message, I'm probably not gonna respond to it unless I'm in a good mood. That's a lie. I'm usually in a good mood. I don't get many messages anymore, but I could be an ass.
Well, it's just a glaring problem of Dust 514 that not all the information that a new player or even a veteran player are doing, it's not in the game at all.
Is bandwidth in the game?
It's in the game, but there's no mentions of why it works, how it works, or what it's supposed to be doing.
E-warfare?
E-warfare is not mentioned to a degree. The best you can do is look up the item descriptions and figure out, oh, so that's why he can see me better.
Yeah, this is why I had some objections with the system, not because, not with the entire core concept, but it's problematic when we keep on layering on new systems and absolutely no help text makes it in.
Oh, okay. Look on the other side. EVE Online implemented bandwidth as well. There's still no help text on it either.
It's a problem. It's a problem everywhere. I can certainly appreciate that it's a consistent problem. It's so easy to see Dust becoming like Eve. Literally. I mean, this is what happened to Eve, right? They started out with a template. Everyone agreed that it was really bad. And they slowly, like an onion, added features in different parts, and it became reasonable. And now, if you're looking for a space MMO, for many people, it's the go-to. And yet, it's so complex, and there is no documentation. The best way to learn how to do most of PC is just to go into the star map and start looking at the buttons, but not hitting the confirm. And even then, you're going to have some questions about how it's finding the times.
Yeah, I think in general the lack of information in game is extremely problematic. I mean, I've said this before, but you see people in the forums quoting, "Oh yeah, the Forge gun is best for killing shield tanks," and I just kind of facepalm and link them. I had to go digging through dev blogs to find the blog with the table in it that shows them that no, it isn't actually made for that, and it's just the lack of information is just stifling. But I mean, that's certainly something to push for. I mean, at the least, I guess players could put together a massive document that could be used to help train people in terms of what's going on currently. But I mean, all in all, it really needs to be in the game client, especially like you said, that there's really no easy way to access the internet, nor should you have to through the Dust client. It should be in game. But I suppose at the least we can try to compile some information as a community, which might be a good endeavor, which again would be a nice argument for an ISD. But regardless, I think we've kind of beat this topic to death. So I think we'll probably wrap it up. We're a little over an hour now, which is what we're supposed to be at, but usually we end up going to 2, 3, something insane. So is there any other quick closing comments you guys wanted to make before we move on to shoutouts?
Have fun shooting each other with snowball launchers.
Oh yeah, and I want my firework swarm launchers. I'm just telling you now. But, right.
I'll put in a request. see, and we'll see what happens.
I mean, we can even go as far as getting some Santa themed commando suits, a little white trim on there, and then we can have little brown reindeer medium suits running around. They'd be all good stuff for the 12 days of Dust. I'm just saying.
Nah, I think that's going a little too far.
Oh man, you're no fun. All right,
I encourage the trusting and naive members of the Planetary Conquest community to totally accept the proposal that everyone have a ceasefire over Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and don't even bother to check those notifications. Should be entertaining.
Oh jeez. All right, let's go on to shoutouts then. Let's start at the let's go from the bottom up. So Soraya Xel.
Shoot, I was gonna think up my shoutout while everyone else shouted.
Okay, fine. Iron Wolf Saber.
I'd like to give a shout out to all the World War One and World War One folks back on Christmas about 200 years ago. Not 200 years ago. 100 years ago was it? My history's pretty bad, but it's definitely the anniversary of when they did have that ceasefire, and basically went in between the trenches and played football and shared a meal even.
Yeah, that's a pretty touching story. For those of you who aren't familiar, you should go look it up. It's pretty neat stuff. Leither?
I'm gonna throw a shout out to the PC community because I've heard some rumors of recent server issues, and from terrible experience, I know how bad that is when your logistics just get completely fried because 5 people DC and stuff. So, shout outs, happy holidays, eat some ice cream or something.
All right, Soraya Xel.
I admit it, I still don't have a shout out. Yeah, shout out to Oreos. They're good. Buy some. I prefer double stuff personally. They're good. Good stuff.
All right, and for me, I guess a shout out to everyone who's listening. I hope you all have a great holiday. For those of you who celebrate Christmas or are already celebrating other holidays right now, I hope you have a good and safe break from hopefully having a bit of a vacation from work and spending time with your family and whatnot. So be safe and have fun. As for next week, it's still a little bit up in the air if we're going to have a show or not.
Some of us might do a thing.
Yeah, Xel wants to. I will probably show up if something happens because I have nothing else to do. I think Jason will probably be MIA, spending time with his family, which is fine. So we'll probably put something together, even if it's just like a little short, like a super short show or something. We'll figure something out, but we'll let you know via Twitter, the forums, the usual avenues. But yeah, I think besides that, just again have a safe holiday. And what episode are we on? Is this 34? Or is it 35?
This is 34.
34. Sweet. I'm actually better than Jason at this.
You're way better than Jason at this. I'm not sure. Like I don't think there's anybody who could be like worse than Jason at it. So yeah.
I find it more funny when he messes it up intentionally and you totally miss it and then freak out later with his 30-something episodes.
If you want someone that messes up more than Jason could, you're speaking to him right here.
I mean,
I don't know. It could get pretty bad.
Like,
what if you
just take Jason's episode number plus or minus 5 for the margin of error, and you're probably somewhere in there.
It really throws me off when I'm doing the YouTube encoding because I'll open up the audio clip because I'm not typically looking at the files. I import them all into Premiere at once, and he'll mess up the first number, and I've actually uploaded the wrong number because of what he said. rather than actually looking at the file. So I've had to re-upload a bunch of videos before because he botched the number and screwed me up. So I just check the file name now, like I should be. But regardless, guys, thanks for tuning in. We will probably catch you next week at some point, and if not, we will most definitely have a show the following week. So thanks for tuning in, and hope you have a nice night. Bye.